Hi, Alan Stratton from Woodturns. First, thank you to all those at the Rocky Mountain Woodturning Symposium that introduced themselves. I appreciate meeting you in those venues. So recently, several of my club members have been turning bowls from cubes, and I can't let them have all the fun. So this week's project will be a bowl from a cube. Now, note that while some may call this segmented, it is really laminated because the stock was glued up in parallel as a board and then processed. But I think I can show another thing that will help out a little bit more with this too. So let's turn this bowl from a cube. I'm starting with a laminated block, probably of yellowheart, padauk, wenge, walnut, and mahogany, maybe maple. It is about 2.5 inches square. I've seen others start with one corner in the spindle taper and the other flattened enough to be able to seat a live center point. To me, this spindle mount risks spinning due to limited friction. The live center also risks being off due to the need to center on the new flat. However, I believe I can do a little better. My cube is mounted between two faceplates, one on the spindle, the other on the live center. Each has a hole in the center. I expect the corners of the wood cube to bite into the edge of the hole. This shows promise to be well centered and spin without slipping. After giving the wood a spin to make sure it clears the tool rest, I can start with a spindle gouge. I need a little more clearance at the live center end for my gouge. Not a problem. The faceplate is wood after all, and the tool is already in my hand. Then go on to whittle away some of the corner to cut it into a tenon. I have to pay attention to the points whipping around. Some tape marks the danger zone on the tool rest. Final trimming is with my skew. That tenon is secure in my long-nosed jaws. The live center side will be the top of the bowl. With the intermittent cuts from the corners whipping around, I appreciate my large bowl gouge. The wood is dry, very hard, with oblique grain pattern. I have to go slowly with light cuts, making sure the gouge does not skate when the wood is intermittent. I cut back the corner and hollowed it a bit, but now I need something to gauge the wall thickness with. This style of bowl could almost be reversible, one bowl on each end with a V-cut between. So I stop and approach the side. I now have 6 corners to deal with, 3 on each side. I add tape to the tool rest to help indicate where they are. Then with the spindle gouge, I start cutting the V. This is not too hard, but I do need the V centered as best I can. I finish the V cut with shear cutting and scraping with my skew as a scraper. This is starting to look nice. Back to the bowl portion to continue hollowing. Easy does it. The corner wings are thin and potentially fragile. I am sighting on the wall between the hollow and the V-cut, following the curve and gauging the wall thickness by it. I finish with a round nose scraper, a traditional scraper, not negative rake, but I do angle it down for a similar effect. My fear here is to break one of those corner wings, but they survive, at least for now. After some debate as to which chuck jaws to use, I settle on the long-nosed jaws, measure them again for an expansion hold, and cut a small, shallow groove inside the bowl, then sand. But after sanding a little, I decide to disguise it better by cutting a second one and rounding them into a pair of beads. One note on sanding I picked up in my body shop job as a teenager: block sanding. Sanding with fingers or a pad tends to cut corners off bumps long before flattening the bump. I do not need a large formal sanding block. A small scrap block will do that I can wrap sandpaper around. Then sand the flat sides, removing chips but keeping the edge crisp. A little different for the convex wings. I sand these also with the block, but keep the block perpendicular to the surface. This has a better chance of removing ridges than hand or power sanding. After the bowl is sanded, I can reverse the bowl onto long-nosed jaws with the jaws expanding into one of the grooves at the beads I cut earlier. Nice! That feels solid, but I will still bring up the live center padded with a rubber stopper for insurance. Whoops, I forgot to measure the bottom thickness. I do not want a fancy funnel. The hollow is close to the flat above the original tenon. That is fine. This is tight quarters, so I switch to a spindle gouge. Still, with careful and light cuts, this time I follow the wings down to solid wood just inside the wings. I cannot hollow this side like the other. I cut the wings first. I also trim the top side of the lower wings. It looks like I overcut just a little bit. I need to disguise the effect. I finish up with some scraping. Then measure again before proceeding to round off the convex portion of the underside. To do this, I now need to get rid of the original tenon. I keep the live center in place until the last fibers are cut. Then I can back off the live center and finish with the scraper. There is not enough wood to waste it. With a detail tool, I touch the V-groove and the intersection between the convex and concave portions of the bottom. I want a more crisp transition. For this project, I am applying wipe-on poly, which also really brings out the grain. Wow, this is pretty. Or at least I think so. In summary, using the wood faceplate prevented the cube from spinning very nicely. This project was not as difficult as I had imagined. Yes, there was a lot of air to cut and fragile wings, but they were not that long and survived very well. It is pretty. Another style would be to put a cover on the bowl, but that would be another interesting project. Stay tuned. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my website because my notifications are more reliable than YouTube's. Please tell your friends about my weekly videos. I appreciate your comments and questions. Please wear your full face shield whenever the lathe is running. This is my best safety tip.